Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining this morning as we continue the Design and Discourse Capstone Studio Presentation Series. The presenters today are Nancy Muñoz and Sophia Shettler, who have both been examining the role of identity in the built environment and explorations of belonging. Today, you'll hear unique perspectives on the topics, including Nancy's presentation about Latinx college students and the roles that cultural centers and design play in their success as students and individuals. You'll also hear from Sophia, who will be talking about inclusive design through the lens of exclusionary design. I will first turn the floor over to Nancy, directly followed by Sophia. After both presentations, the remaining time will be for Q&A and any concluding remarks. So thank you again, everybody. Nancy, feel free to take it away.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, my presentation decided to refresh. So while that loads, my name is Nancy Muñoz. I am a senior in the interior design program over at Western. Some of you might know me, some of you may not, but my name is Nancy. And like Kim mentioned, my presentation is regarding how Latinx culture centers impact college students and their experiences, specifically focusing on my experience as well as a college student and a Latinx woman. All right, let's give this a try. Oh, lovely. Okay. So today I'm going to be talking about my experience and the experiences of Latinx students. My interactive survey that I created for the Latinx Art Showcase this past year, and then a couple president studies that I looked at with culture centers at current universities. So some key definitions I wanted to make sure to include is one, Latinx. So this is referring to someone who comes from or whose family originates from a Latinx or Latin American country. And the term Latinx is kind of used to be more inclusive because in many Latin languages, there's like feminine and masculine words and they always ended O and A. And this is the term Latinx is used to kind of include people who are non-binary or do not side with either pronoun. And another term that I might mention a few times here is predominantly white institution, or PWI for short. According to the Encyclopedia of African American Education, the term used to describe institutions of higher learning in which whites account for 50% or greater of the student enrollment. So Western is an example of that. So this is me. Picture on the left is a picture of me and my brother who also graduated from Western in 2015. And then that's us on move-in day. And then that's me on the right, also a freshman. That was taken when we were doing like a scavenger hunt for the first year experience student. If you are not familiar with that bus, it was the brown and gold bus that would circle around on Western's campus, stop at every bus stop you've probably ever seen on campus if you've been on campus. They don't exist anymore, unfortunately, due to COVID, but they were probably a highlight for anyone who was at Western before that. So what these pictures don't really share is experiences that I've had. These things are kind of hard for me to talk about sometimes, so just putting that out there now. But these pictures don't depict that I am a first-generation college student. And you might be able to tell that I am Latin American from the pictures. However, one thing that isn't clearly shown is that I experienced lots of loneliness throughout my first year here at Western. At least that's how I felt. It was kind of a shock to me when I walked into classes and I was one of the few people of color in my classes. While I had already known that was something that I probably would have experienced. I just didn't think to the caliber that I did, it would be so present. I also, when I talk about things from home, like food, music, I didn't think so many people just wouldn't know what I was talking about. So I was less likely to talk about them with some friends that I'd made. And arguably, one of the worst is I couldn't find the Valentina hot sauce at Meyer. No matter how many trips I'd make, I just couldn't find it where I normally would back at home. But I think what made these experiences amplified was the fact that I struggled meeting people who shared these experiences like me. It took a while to ever come across other Latinx students. Latinx, I didn't have my first person of color as a professor till last semester in a Spanish class. So these all, I didn't realize it at the time, but they all impacted me. And what did I do? I accepted it. That's kind of what I've always done. I recognized that it was just gonna be something that I was gonna have to experience and go through. And I just told myself that this is what it is, take it or leave it. So I took it. And I'm glad I did in a way, because I'm still here, about to graduate. But then things luckily changed in 2020. So while the world was on fire and we couldn't see each other, I was fortunate enough to have found the Latino Student Alliance here at Western. So the Latino Student Alliance is a student-led organization dedicated to empowering Latinx students, creating a home away from home, and bringing awareness to Latinx culture at Western. They were holding weekly Zoom meetings, and it made it more accessible for me to attend these meetings. I had them up, I had the Zoom call on one screen, I had my homework on the other, and I was just there interacting with them, also doing homework. And I was able to meet some people through this, and I felt empowered to join the executive board, to kind of in a way give back to students who might be feeling the same way as I did. So I was marketing chair for 1 year, and now I'm a social chair. In LSA, I helped plan large-scale events such as the Latinx Student Art Showcase and El Grito. I also connected with other Latinx students and heard their stories. So here are just some pictures of some LSA meetings. We have like a General Assembly meeting on top left. The top right is the first El Grito event. The bottom right is another e-board picture with one of the performers for El Grito. And then the bottom right is just a picture of us on one of our canvas painting nights. And as you can see, a lot of us come together for these events, and I think most of us for the same reason, because we're searching for a sense of identity within a higher education. So some takeaways reflecting back on these experiences was that I was not alone. A lot of Latinx students felt the same way. We just weren't together enough to be able to recognize that. Students attending these events were more likely to apply to scholarships, internships, jobs. They're more active on campus. And that's just because they felt empowered, and they felt that they had more of a voice and realized the impact that their presence makes on this campus. Students also looked forward to going to LSA events because they felt welcomed and safe. And programs like the Camp College Assistance Migrant Program and Foundation Scholars helped many students get connected to other Latinx students and mentors that helped them guide them through any challenges that came their way. However, there were other things I noticed. LSA was challenged with finding spaces to host events on campus. They were either booked by admissions events, or there just wasn't enough space for the events that we needed to hold. They weren't, accessible to us. Those attending LSA would most likely only see each other at events and occasionally on campus, if there were friends. The Bernhard Center was the hub, but because of construction and changes happening on campus, it's not going to be here for long. While the new student center is being built, there is not going to be many people have concerns it's not going to be enough to hold all the student body in just one space, especially those of color. There's not a lot of Latinx representation between staff and faculty at Western, making it hard for Latinx students to find working professionals to inspire them. So what now? Looking back at all of this, I felt like there had something to do, and it ended up influencing my capstone for this year. So I've decided to design a Latinx cultural center for my capstone. So I started researching, and the main driving question I had was, how can the built environment contribute to the success of Latinx students? I also noticed through talking to people, sub-professionals at Western, that programs like Camp or Foundation Scholars and LSA, they've all contributed to the retention rates between Latinx students. And while these programs are great, not everyone knows about them, and there isn't a space for students to necessarily find these spaces and meet these students. So these two books were one of the main driving factors of my research. There's culture centers in higher education that talked about the different types of culture centers for different affinity groups, and then Campus Counter Spaces is more of a book specifically for Black and Latinx students searching for community at historically white institutions, or PWIs. So these two books kind of give me insight and things to think about when researching for how to best create a space that would support Latinx students, and how it would connect these students and other students to campus. So to get a further understanding, I needed to not just look at what was already written and what was out there, but also, since I was focusing on Western students specifically, I created this interactive survey. This survey was presented at the Latinx Student Art Showcase hosted by LSA. And these are before and after pictures. So the top one's before, the second one's after. And I'm just going to read to you that little paragraph I have written on the right side. So as Latinos at a predominantly white institution, our experiences are systematically challenged. Many of us are first-generation college students who are paving the way for future generations. We're often the first and the few Latinos in the classroom, in the workplace, and in the community. We're here utilizing the space we deserve in spaces that we were not originally designed for us. We are here, you are here, I am here. And then there's instructions underneath that say use this board to share your experiences on this campus by selecting a colorful thread and answer the questions below by connecting relevant words together. And the questions are like, why are you here? Why are you still here? What brought you here? What obstacles have you faced here? So students were able to get this corresponding string, tie it to relevant words to answer the questions. So some of these words include opportunity, family, first generation, career, money, just different reasons why they might still be at Western or in school, and what things have come their way and what have caused them to experience challenges. So diving a little bit deeper, I looked into a couple organizations that already have programs created. Not all of these necessarily have a space, like a physical space or a building for them. But the first one that I came across was the Latinx Cultural Center at Purdue University. They opened in April of 2003. So they actually do have a space. It was a home that was renovated, and I'll go a little bit into their timeline later on. But they host events for all the different Latinx students. There's like Latinx groups, there's multicultural orgs, Greek orgs that will use this space as well. But specifically for Latinx students, and they welcome all students as well. Next, we have Laker Familia, which is a program designed to introduce students to resources that will support their academic, cultural, and emotional well-being. Laker Family that promotes and facilitates meaningful interactions with the goal of improving academic success, retention, and graduation. So this is a program set up at GVSU, Grand Valley State University in Allendale, Michigan. So they meet as a collective group, and then this group is kind of formed first year at Western. So right when, or not Western, at Grand Valley. So right when these students get to Grand Valley, they are immediately immersed into a group of people who look like them, and they know where to find these students and who to connect with. And then lastly, I research culture centers at U of M. So U of M actually has a couple, but specifically to Latinx students, they don't necessarily have a specific space just for Latinx students besides in their residence halls or dorms. However, an issue with this is that you can only access these types of spaces, so they're lounges, if you live there or you know someone who does, who can let you into their building. So those who are living off campus might not be able to use these types of spaces. But they do also have a building called the Trotter Multicultural Center for all students of color. So going into the first precedent study is the Latino Cultural Center at Purdue University. So the LCC, as they like to call it, started in 2002 with an idea where Latinx faculty, staff, and students kind of came together and demanding a physical space so that they could experience a home away from home. They created a committee, they've made a proposal, they proposed it to the provost to create a space like this. And like I mentioned, they were established in April 11th in 2003. They were able to use up a space called the South Campus Courts, which were on a type of on-campus housing for students that were not being utilized at the time. And eventually the provost at Purdue allowed them to have a dedicated space to grow their program, as they've seen so many people use it. And they've adapted the slogan "Todos bienvenidos," which translates to "all are welcome." And in 2006, they moved into their new location, which is a house located near Purdue's campus. It was it was more central to Purdue's campus. They stayed in this location for 11 years, where they hosted numerous cultural events. They took on some renovations over time, but then in May of 2017, they moved into this new home. It is also another house that they renovated to suit their needs. So there's spaces in there like meeting rooms, there's a kitchen they can use, there's nap nooks, there's a computer lab with printers. So if they need to print off essays or whatever, they have all that accessible to them. They also have people like faculty and staff that will visit the space so they can meet with their students as well. And next we have El Centro, which is located at Northeastern Illinois University. So this one actually started a lot earlier as more of just a English as a second language learning program. It was to create more access for better educational opportunities and access to higher education. It's important to note that it was in the 1960s, which was around the time the civil rights movements were happening. So people really felt empowered to create spaces or create programming to educate the Latinx people and students in the community, so that they can grow, set their roots further, and develop their families within the community. So that was how that one was started, but then they started opening their storefront to other neighborhoods as well nearby, where it's predominantly Hispanic. So there was more opportunities for people to volunteer for these language programs. It helped adults earn GEDs, and they also tutored youth and provided counseling. But then in 1972, due to lack of funding, the program had to shut down. but that only lasted for about a year because the program was restarted with the program, and with the program that still offered the English as a second language classes and GED classes, but they also started adding college level courses and basic skills programming into this program. They moved into this building in 1973, which is in Pulaski Street, which is in the area where many Hispanic and Latinx families live. But then in 2014, they created a dedicated building as a satellite campus for Northeastern Illinois University. So this space is more than just a cultural center. It's a full running kind of like an East campus to Western is their version of this. So they offer college courses where you can get degrees in like Latin American studies, communications, and things like that. There's also spaces for lounging and meeting with professors, and also getting like student resources like counseling and writing centers and things like that. So this space is unique because it was a new build, and that's not something you see often with cultural centers. They're usually when cultural centers of any kind are being built or designed, they're just renovations of existing buildings that no longer serve a purpose for the university. So they're giving them just a space that's been collecting dust essentially to students, and it kind of creates this idea that it's an afterthought. Like you're not as significant because it's an older building. And usually these older buildings, like the Trotter House, for example, one of their buildings that they had moved into experienced a lot of plumbing issues, a lot of old pipes from rotting because they just didn't upkeep the building over time. So which caused them to have to create a new building. So this is a unique example of that. Within Northeastern Illinois University. So from this research, I decided what I wanted to do essentially with creating a culture center for Western. The circumstances are different, just because, especially comparing it to the one in the Northeastern Illinois University campus, because they do have a higher population of Latinx students. And at Western, I believe we're at 8%, 7 to 8% Latinx students on campus, both undergrad and graduate students. So, but with my space, some of the outcomes I want to achieve is to bring awareness of Latinx culture on campus. I don't want this space to be a space secluded just for Latinx students. I want it to be a space where anyone can learn about the Latinx culture, because when a lot of the kind of trying to think of the best way to describe it, but I guess a lot of the conflict people experience within different cultures is the fact that they just don't know about them. They haven't taken the time to learn about them. And sometimes you just need to present these cultures to people. Someone in a passive way, by just having just events or having items from Latin cultures so that people can learn about them. So that's kind of bridges that gap of not knowing, and kind of brings people together just by bringing awareness. I also want this space to want this building to create a safe space on campus where Latinx students have the resources available for them to succeed. So I envision this space having counseling, opportunity for students to meet with any types of mentorships, study groups can be hosted here, kind of just a space where Latinx students can reside and not have to think about, I guess, other people necessarily being around them, having to assimilate to their peers. Another outcome is I want to provide more spaces for students and to study and meet with groups, and to create a central hub for student organizations to host events and for the student body. So with my experience within LSA, trying to find spaces just for us to host events, was a challenge for us. And I hope that we're creating more of these spaces can eliminate these types of factors and experiences in the future for these students. But yes, that is what I have today. I'm still actively working on this capstone. The second semester, I'm in the programmatic phases and designing phases. So I look forward to how it will all play out. But thank you for listening and joining me on my journey.
Thank you so much, Nancy. We are going to move on to Sophia, which has a very relevant and important discussion as well on a similar topic. Sophia, please take it away.
All righty. Everyone can hear me? We're good? All right. That's going to be a hard one to follow, Nancy. You did so great. Okay. Here we go. So, hello, everybody. Welcome to my presentation. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about my project, Inclusive Exclusive, which is my capstone project this semester and was my thesis project last semester. So I will be starting with my thesis statement, and I'm going to read that to you. Exclusive design focuses on smaller subsections of society, allowing for deeper understanding of its users and how to design for them. It is possible to utilize social, emotional, mental, psychological, and political design methods, in addition to physical considerations to enhance user experience. This narrowed-in design can have unparalleled benefits for understanding the users and how they experience the space. By applying exclusive design strategies, designers can better understand how to truly design for inclusion. So basically, what this means is I've spent a lot of time researching and going to precedent studies and looking at exclusive spaces and inclusive spaces. And I've noticed a trend that the more exclusive the space, the more it's designed for specific people or specific purposes, the better it is designed. And we can learn from these spaces and overall design better. And so what I will be talking about today is the precedent studies that I visited for this, or to create the thesis statement. But first I wanted to just address the things that I noticed at each place. So I have identified these as the 5 layers of exclusive design. And just to briefly go over them, it is safety, access, escape, community, and identity. And each of these spaces have addressed these in different ways and with different attributes of the space. And we'll talk a little bit about these in each space. So the first space is the MSU Women's Lounge. And it was the Women's Lounge from 1940 to 2016. And there isn't a ton of information on it that far back because it has since been renovated and changed. So there wasn't a ton of relevant pictures or other things. But from what I could tell, this was a place for community. They had community-centered seating. There was more lounge and living room-like. They emphasize safety, so people could come in here and they could nap and they could breastfeed and they could just feel safe and escape from areas where they may have been hit on by men while trying to study, or just people trying to distract them. And here that wouldn't happen. And so another part of this was the breastfeeding that I had mentioned. So nursing mothers could literally use this space or the adjacent restroom to nurse and not be worried about it, not be worried about people bothering them or someone saying something to them. It was just completely inclusive in this place because they didn't have to go anywhere. They could just do their thing, and it was amazing. But then in 2016, they renovated the space. There was multiple reasons, but one of the most talked about ones is that a professor from a neighboring university said, "Oh, well, how is this space fair to men?" So they renovated the space and they renamed it and they called it the Quiet Study Area. So I got to actually visit this area this past semester, and some things I noticed right off the bat is there's much less of an emphasis on community. So it's mostly like study tables with a little bit of lounge furniture here and there, which I believe has been reused. And there also is a lot of attempts for them to correct the safety that was previously there. So they made this little sign that said, oh, if you need late night parking, if you need to park closer, we can help you with that. We'll just give you this code and you can do this every month and we'll give you a new code next month. So that was just another hoop to jump through, where with the previous lounge, the parking situation was that women could safely wait in this space for someone to pick them up and it was totally fine. But now there's more hoops to jump through to be able to get a closer spot. They have to get this code every month. It was just interesting to see that attempt to correct the safety that was there before. And then also with this, they seem to try to provide a nursing area, which would have tried to correct that inclusion of mothers trying to nurse. But in reality, when I visited, they had to lock the nursing areas. So those nursing areas are locked all the time. So people in the quiet study lounge would have to go from the study lounge to the nursing area, realize it's locked, go to the welcome desk, get the key, go back to the nursing area, use the key, nurse, and then finally return the key. And then finally, after all that, go back to studying, when before they could just nurse in the privacy of the women's lounge where they felt safe and included and an area to escape. And just to emphasize this more, I wanted to show both of these next to each other, that the previous women's lounge, even though it was more exclusive in the eyes of some people, it really was more inclusive to nursing mothers and women who would use this space for nursing, napping, and things of that nature. So then after this, after researching some women's spaces, I decided to research some LGBTQ specific spaces. So this is Community Wellness. It is a little coffee shop in Grand Rapids, and they're branded more as a exclusive LGBTQ spot. So some things I noticed while I was visiting there is they had community events, they had community art, they had pride decor, they had ADA gender neutral restrooms. They had a automatic door, which is actually a big deal, and I'll talk about that a little more, but that's a really expensive thing, and that is a great way to show your inclusiveness, is through that ADA automatic door. And then I also wanted to touch on this community events or community contributions that the Lotus Brew Community Wellness does. They have a banned book library, which features many LGBTQ books that would possibly not be allowed in school, but are very good for the youth of the LGBTQ community. They also have a board game library and a pantry where you can take whatever you need, and with a board game library, you can return it, and you can even rent it for up to 30 days. They also have tons of events, which are usually specific to the LGBTQ community. They make many donations, some to the DAAC. They also do discounts, usually year-round, for students, teachers, counselors, etc. They use local fair-made trade and organic products. And overall, they are just a support to the community. And when in the space, I really noticed that it felt very inclusive, it felt very warm, it felt very safe. And another place to compare this to then is the Table of Contents Cafe in Kalamazoo. And this is actually a space that I like a lot, but what I noticed when I visited here, really focusing on the exclusive design elements and the inclusivity of it, it felt different. It felt that they weren't showing or reflecting their inclusivity, because part of their business bio is that they're marketed as a strong supporter of and meaningful participant in creative and intellectual community within and beyond Kalamazoo. And they had emphasized LGBT people, but I really didn't see this in a space. So I saw a little bit of colorfulness, I saw some different elements, but nothing that really stuck out to me. And even here, you don't have an ADA automatic door, you have a gender neutral restroom, but just not everything is reflected. Even in the events that they do, none of them are very specific. They're very broad. So they have open mic nights, they have trivia nights, they have these different events, but they're more targeted as a broader audience. And I think that hurt their overall exclusive design method in their space. So then I decided to visit an inclusive space. So this inclusive space is Midwest Movement, and it's in Grand Rapids. It's basically a movement studio that is meant to be completely inclusive, and it'll teach different movement dances to anyone and everyone. It is supposed to be a safe place, and they make all of their like rules and agreements with the community in mind. So they actually have the community contribute to like the rules of the space. And you get a feel for like what different classes they have in this bottom left corner here. Oh, I thought I had one more, sorry. But this space, when visiting it, at first I thought it didn't feel like anything. The space doesn't really reflect their inclusiveness at all. It really feels that it was put together very rushed, but I do love their the goal that they're going for, but I don't feel that they're reflecting it, and I don't feel that they're using enough strategies, because one of the conversations I had with one of the co-owners is that they were thinking about adding in affinity classes, and affinity classes are basically specific to, or they're targeted classes to specific people. For example, they would do a plus size yoga class where it would just be people who identified as plus size doing yoga. And that would be an example as an exclusive design strategy that they are considering using, because their demographic of their clientele right now is really small. So they're trying to broaden that by doing these exclusive affinity classes. And then next, I wanted to touch on something that's kind of close to me, which is lecture hall seating at Western. So that was another area I wanted to look into, because I had the pleasure of having a business class last semester in the 200 room in Schneider, which is this lovely lecture hall that you see in the upper right-hand corner. So this lecture hall was very restrictive. I literally couldn't even put my lap desk down all the way, which really hinders my learning. And it made me look at different layers of seating that could be possible. The one in Schneider would be an example of negative exclusive seating. This is seating that is designed just to be there, just to fit like the average person, and it is not the way to go. But an example of a positive exclusive lecture hall seating would maybe be including a few rows of seats that are wider, or simply removing arm rests is an easier way to fit more people of different sizes and shapes. And then a great example of an inclusive lecture hall seating is in Sangren Hall, where they have these fully mobile seats, no armrests, and it also has a less population of seats. So a typical lecture hall is about 300, and Schneider has moved these down to about 75, which is a great way to be inclusive. But it is also important to point out that the exclusive, or the positive exclusive, is a great way to go as well. And then I was able to discuss this concept more with Eleonora, who had done her own project of a small scale renovation of one of the spaces in Corman, I believe. And it had this useless platform with these old seats that it was crazy awkward and uncomfortable. And by simply just changing the removing the platform, removing the seats, and then adding in those movable seats and desks that we saw at the previous slide, it made the space much more inclusive. And then one of the last areas I was able to research was Joel Sanders' stalled project. This is basically a gender neutral restroom, a large scale gender neutral restroom. So this would be in place of a men's room and a women's room in one spot. And it allows for complete full sightline entrance, full sightline hallways. It's a really interesting project, and I recommend you look it up on your own. But it's just emphasized that this space, though it is combining everything into an exclusive way, it's using exclusive design methods. It's using those ADA stalls. It's using those ADA gender neutral individual restrooms. It's combining everything into one thing to make it inclusive. So it's using those exclusive design methods to do that, which after all of that research, I decided that I wanted to design some exclusive spaces that would use the exclusive design methods. So I will be designing an LGBTQ plus cafe, a plus size cafe, and a women's cafe. Each of these will use the same building base, and it'll be a way to represent the research that I did on each of these categories. And I also fall into each of these categories. So I'm able to use not only research, but personal experience to design thoughtfully and use exclusive design attributes and the 5 layers of exclusive design. And then at the end, basically, the idea is that you can study each of these spaces and design more inclusively. So that is my presentation.
Thank you so much, Sophia. That was really, really wonderful. I think the first thing we'll do is open up to the audience for anybody that has questions or comments. I don't know if you saw, I recognize the room you just showed because I started teaching the psychology and philosophy course in there. And I had no idea it was there. I walked in thinking, why aren't we actually using this space more? So it's been really nice, and I can see that students are more comfortable in that space and can actively move around, and it supports different activities, learning styles. And also it's better for the teacher too. You can do a better job in that space. So that's my comment.
I can't even imagine what it was like, what they were thinking when they designed it that way, because even having the platform in there creates a complete barrier for people who are in a wheelchair or people who have have mobility issues. Like, I can't imagine how that space came to be in the first place.
Yeah. In the back row is actually a taller table with taller chairs, kind of like bar height. They're the same chairs, just longer legs. Which means that it's a different seating option, but then people who need to kind of sit and stand on and off can easily do that there without being like a visual blocker to other students, and like there's extra space to walk around too. So I didn't even notice that at first. I noticed that it appeared that things were getting higher, but everything is on the same floor plate. And I just thought that was a really interesting thing to do there. So yeah,
I completely agree.
All right. Questions, comments? I see that Dustin joined us.
Yeah, I'm here. Hello. Hi. I don't know. It's great. Yeah, I mean, thanks for doing this. Even though the it looks like the audience might be a little small today, that doesn't take away the importance of taking the step. It's really important sometimes just to step back a little bit and kind of recenter ourselves on like what is the essence of the project, but then also to getting these critical issues out into more of a public venue is really, really important, because that's the whole idea behind like critically applied design research. Like, it doesn't do us any good if we just keep it in our studio, you know what I mean? It's like we're really trying to add agency and really mobility to bringing about greater awareness to both of your issues that are very socially based and I consider incredibly important in how we're thinking about the design of physical space. So yeah, thanks for doing this today. That's all the
Yeah.
comments. Yeah. And thanks too also for being on, part of the annual design and discourse series as official presentation set number 2 that will go down in history, I'm sure. As this will be a reoccurring thing every year for multiple years to come. So
Yeah, and being that it is virtual and we can record it, I do know, I mean, not everybody's schedule lines up perfect. So I do know that there are people in the higher ed leadership at Western interested in both of your topics and really curious. And there seems to be a lot of community interest in it as well. So this allows for both of you to be able to share your presentation with anybody that wasn't able to come today. And then you can always have it on hand too. So. All right.
And
Well,
before we sign
yeah.
off, I just wanted to say that Nancy, I really loved your presentation and how you took us first through your personal experience, because having watched your presentations in the past, I think that was a great way to tie everything together and really showcase all of your past experiences, your research, and even where you're going next. So I just want to say that was really great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think both of you did really amazing professional presentations. You can take these presentations and continue giving them when you are solicited to do expert presentations for everybody now on these topics. So. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. We will conclude today's meeting. Unless, Dustin, did you have any conclusion remarks? Nope, I'm getting a head shake. Nope. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, and I will see you later. Bye.